I'm here with a new wiki tutorial, and this time I will try to explain what I mean when I say we have to thin the paint down and how you know if the paint is thin correctly. And I will show a couple different ways to thin the paint. First, I want to show this is a base paint. This is a Screamer Pink. Is just taken from the pot. If you take from with a normal brush from the pot, you will see that if the paint is thick, you will have this effect, this type of doublet that is you see here on the top. First of all, you always have to take some of this paint off, but when you take it off, you will see also that is leaving like this big paint. So this paint at this moment is too thick to paint. So if I'm painting now this piece as example, you will see that if I go to the holes, I'm risking to cover the holes because this paint is too thick, and it's not extremely thick, but can be too thick to paint some parts. So to avoid to cover the tail, and this paint will be, what we can do is, first of all, what I do if I'm painting directly from the pot and to save time, I take some water with my brush, I put the water on the pot, I mix it up here a little bit, and this part is going to be thinner, much thinner than the rest. And now you will see the difference. I have to dry my brush. You will see the difference now. You see, it's not accumulating at the bottom, at the tip, and you have much more control on the tip. Now you can make really thin lines. Okay, you have much control. It's not accumulating. It's a little bit more transparent because you are diluting the paint. But if you go to this, to here, you will see that you completely don't block any part of the texture. And if you're accumulating too much paint on a part, because it's too thin, imagine that I put too many here, it's so I thin down enough that will not cover the hole. Once it's dry, you will see that the paint will leave a thinner layer. If you put too much water, then you will have the opposite effect. So once you put too much water, for example here I put too much water, then the paint will start, you will not have any control on the paint, and you will see that do that. You see, it's like you will not have any control and will be difficult to paint. This I use if I make the mistake that I put too much paint, like here. What I can do is I put water and then I try to move the paint. Now you see it's too much watery. So it's important to control, and the way to know if you're having the right texture, for example, if I take from here that is too thick, well, this is a corrugated piece of paper, but you will see that, well, this, let me show it better. I need to dry well the brush. I will do it here in that part, it's going to be easier. So if I take from the dry part, you will see that there is a moment that is breaking the paint and it's too thick. If I take it from the part that I water it down a little bit, you will see that the paint is lasting much longer and is less thick, so you have more control. If I take too watery, then if you do a test on a paper, you will have this type of effect. First, will paint very little, and the paint will start following the porosity of the paper. So this is one thing that you have to take into account. So you have always to control the right viscosity of the paint. This is one way to control that. The other way to control is to do the mixture with thinner. So how we do the mixture with thinner, I will take another paint. I need to take this pot because this paint is thicker than the other one and will show better what I mean. You see, this paint is real thicker. When I take, this is too thick. This paint is too thick. When you paint, it's going to give a very thick layer, and it's going to be difficult to control. Unless you want to do, you are very fast, it will give too much paint normally. and now it's because, and will give this type of like, how it's called, like orange skin. So it will give not a thin texture, will give like a rough texture. If you want to make it thinner, take some water, mix it with the paint. I test it here, you see first on the side, and then this is much better and will give much thinner surface. You will need more layers, of course, because if you see, and this is a little bit too much watery this moment. If that happens, that is too much watery, it's easier to solve. You can take some paint with a thinner, and now with the water that you put there will thin down. Of course, this white color on top of black will need help to cover. And normally you will need 2 layers. As I will say, this is why I will say it's better 2 thin layers, and you can see I'm trying to do 2 thin layers than making a thick layer. You can see here this layer was so thin that we can apply a new one. If you put too much water, as what I explained before, this was borderline, but if I put even more water, then the effect is this. The effect is this. When you put too much water, you don't have any control. You have this effect. That the water is like making a wash with water, and the wash with water is not working. Will do this type of effects. That you cannot have any control where the paint goes. So this is only work, for example, if I did here 2 thin part, I can apply this. Now it's dry, but you can apply this, try to thin down the surface. So this is too watery. When this happens, you have to wait until it dries and go to another part. This was better, and now I can take, now the water have mixed a little bit more, I can take a little bit more, and then, but you see, this is too watery, and then you are removing the paint that was before. This is what happens when it's too watery. Okay, another way to thin the paint. Let me mix this one a little bit. It will take a long time. This, you see, this is a thick paint. When you can do that, this paint is too thick to paint. Okay, this is too thick to paint. So we put some on your palette, and then we can take Lahmian medium. And we put some Lahmian medium. Normally I put some next to it, some droplets with the brush, and I mix. This is more the texture we look for. Okay? You will see that when you thin down the paints with water, they work much better. I can paint now here because this is completely dry now, but you see, you want to be thin. You don't want to cover. And this will help you to have a very thin layer that will not cover any detail of the miniature. Okay? And this is a flat surface, is one of the worst surfaces to do. You can even see the texture of the dry brush that I did, of the primer. So you see, you do a thin layer, you want it thin, and you want to do 2 layers. It's better always to do 2 layers than just one, as I always say. You see, this is the right and nice. You can be a little bit thicker than that, but don't be thinner because it's going to be too much. For example, if I go here that I have some detail, it will cover well everything and will be ready to do a second layer. And I'm taking a difficult color on a top of black. That is, this can be the almost the worst combination, having very light color on top of black prime. You see the difference. This is too watery. This was too thick. You can see that if you touch now, you notice that there is not an even surface, and this should be the right proportion. And this is one, so you almost one is a little bit more thicker than milk. Okay, so if it's like milk, will happen this. If it's a little bit thicker, then, and you see that it's drying so fast, and the thinner is drying faster than the water normally. So you see now we can do, and you see now the second layer is giving very nice coverage, and most likely we'll need a third one to have a complete good coverage. Another trick is let it dry, and the next one will be in the opposite direction. So you see here, this is completely dry now. Well, it's not completely, but it's almost dry. So we can apply here another layer, and you will see that now when you apply with the correct thinner, you cover correctly the surface. Okay, so important to, and this means some practice, important to understand when the paint is thick or is thin enough. So just to summarize, when this happens, that you take this and you have this like this dropped, this is too thick. You see, this is going to be too thick. This is covered completely, of course, when you paint on black. This is covering completely. But you are risking, if you paint with that and you have fine detail, here will not be a big issue because this detail is quite big. But if you're painting flat surfaces or you're painting and fine detail, you have the risk of covering if you go that thick. And it's more difficult to cover well the surface. This is quite a good, you see that it's not making this big droplet. You take a little bit the excess. This should be good enough, and you see the paint is also is not covering that much, but is put evenly on the piece. On the contrary, if I now put too much thinner in purpose, and I do the other extreme, this will do like a wash. Okay, you will have like a wash, and this is not working at all. So this is too thin at this moment. Okay, so this is too thin. You don't have any control where the paint goes. So this is what I wanted to explain in this week. I think it's important to understand, and I think it's important to practice. This is why some people is testing on the nail. So you see, this is too thin. This is too thick. You give, and then I don't know if I still have here. Maybe if I take it from here. This is too thin again. So you think this is why some people is testing on his nail how to do it. Normally I test it on top, and this is why I have this paper with a lot of paint there. And always have a paper like that with all the paint, and this is where I'm testing if the paint is correct enough, and also to take the excellent. So if I take too much by accident, I take all the excess, and now I have the right paint, and now I can paint here. You see, this is now in the right thin. This is thin good enough, and when it's thin good enough, you will see that it's leaving like that on your nail. So yeah, just I use this piece just for demonstration. What I mean when I say thin paint, you see in my videos I will say thin it down, take care, try not to cover the tail. When it's important to avoid to have the paint too thick when you're painting this type of things. If you're painting a head, or you're painting fine detail, or you want to do the hand and all these type of things, normally you need to thin down the paint. If you want to have not to see the brush strokes on flat surfaces, always thin the paint. So it's very important, and it's one of the most important things, and the most to do is to have control on the mixture of thinner and paint that you're using, and to get used and to use that to your advantage. Of course, in that case, for example, if I want to cover this piece very fast, especially in this where you have the strips, I can use it directly. It's not going to thin down, but I will not cover any detail. But once I go to here that I have these small holes or go to other parts, then I thin it down to be sure that I'm covering correct well. See this part, this other layer, this was done with the thick paint. You start clogging the holes here, so you want to avoid this. So this is what I wanted to show in that video. I hope you find it useful and you find it interesting, and I hope you like it. Please comment below, let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any other question or any other topic that you would like to be covered on my weekly videos. I will try to keep showing my tricks and my tips, and I hope you find it interesting. So thanks a lot for watching, and see you in later. Bye.